Around 17 years before COVID-19 and what is termed SARS-CoV-2, there was SARS or SARS-CoV-1. But where did SARS go and how does it relate to COVID-19? Wikipedia states that SARS is a viral respiratory disease of zoonotic origin caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, SARS-CoV or SARS-CoV-1, and the syndrome caused the 2002 to 2004 SARS outbreak. The first patient to trigger the SARS panic was reported to have come from the Guangdong province in China. The media was quick to produce dramatic coverage and suggested everybody could be at risk from the new epidemic. One of the most prominent deaths was that of Italian doctor Carlo Urbani, who worked for the WHO. Urbani is credited with being the first to identify SARS as a new disease. He was working in the French hospital of Hanoi in Vietnam, and it was here that he was said to have contracted the illness from a patient he was treating. 18 days later, Urbani was dead. We discuss the circumstances of his death in the upcoming new edition of Virus Mania. The SARS scare was all over in around 8 months, with the WHO declaring the situation contained on the 5th of July 2003. In 2005, the New York Times reported that the virus that caused SARS had disappeared. The number of cases was said to be around 8,000, with an alarming fatality rate of about 10%. Obviously, though, these case numbers are very small for a multi-country epidemic. It must be pointed out, however, that the SARS case definition was much more specific than what we've seen with SARS-2 or COVID-19. With regards to SARS, the diagnosis was usually based on strong clinical signs and symptoms, including fever, progressive shortness of breath, and hypoxemia or low blood oxygen, with some suggesting that for a probable case, a chest x-ray must be indicative for atypical pneumonia or acute respiratory distress syndrome. The case definition of COVID-19, on the other hand, can be based on a single indirect laboratory test and doesn't have to have anything to do with severe acute respiratory syndrome. I go into the details of this in my video, What is a COVID-19 case? In May 2003, the New York Times reported that SARS can affect anyone who has the bad luck to be in the way of a contaminated sneeze or cough. SARS can be so explosive that scores of family members and health workers can be infected from a cough from one patient. And researchers have rushed to test existing drugs against the virus and to begin to develop new ones. My Virus Mania co-authors started asking many important questions back in 2005, a time when I still had my training wheels on in medical school. They wrote to the Robert Koch Institute in Germany requesting the following information. Number 1. Please name the studies that indisputably show that the SARS virus has been proven to exist, complete purification, isolation, and definition of biochemical properties plus electron micrographs. 2. Please name studies that indisputably show that the virus named above causes disease and also that other factors like malnutrition, toxins, etc. do not at least co-determine the course of disease. To date, despite repeated questioning, our team at Virus Mania has not had a single study named to us. And if anyone from the RKI is watching, please get in touch with us if you have anything on this. Oh, and on those other questions we asked too. So why does history record that there was a single viral cause at play with regards to all of the SARS cases? Some seem to claim that this paper that appeared in The Lancet in July 2003 established that SARS-CoV-1 could indeed be implicated as the monocausal agent. On superficial appearances, it looks like they may have been able to prove that SARS-CoV is the primary cause of SARS. But wait a minute, what actually went on in the study involving 4 poor little monkeys? Firstly, they took a sample from a single human SARS victim and produced a cellular culture in the lab through several steps. The monkeys were then infected by squirting this mixture into their tracheas, noses and eyes. On the 2nd, 4th and 6th days, the monkeys were anaesthetized with ketamine, an anesthetic known for its hallucinogenic properties. Blood samples were taken from veins in the groin and smears were obtained from the nose, mouth, throat and anus. The monkeys were all killed for autopsies after just 6 days. 3 of the monkeys became lethargic after 2 or 3 days. On the 4th day, 2 developed temporary rashes. Only 1 monkey had any breathing difficulties, while 3 showed non-advancing tissue damage to the lungs. The lymph nodes near the trachea and the spleen were larger than normal in these 3 monkeys. The other organs all appeared normal under microscopic examination. Now, there are some glaring weaknesses with this study. Firstly, the monkeys' illnesses were not typical of SARS. Only 1 monkey had breathing issues, and there was no mention of any of them having a cough or fever, which are some of the key features of SARS. And none of the monkeys became critically unwell or actually died from SARS. They were all euthanized by the researchers. Secondly, the paper claimed to identify coronavirus particles in monkey tissue on electron microscopy, but many different virus-sized particles are part of the cell culture. So without particle purification, it's impossible to know exactly what they were. Now, there seems to have been a lot of confusion about isolation and purification. Purification means that we've got rid of the host cell material and culture medium and just have the alleged virions by themselves. Virions are the complete viral particle, meaning it includes its shell and everything inside. So if it's not purified, then there will be other viral-sized particles in the material, which may appear in the electron micrograph images and may also contribute other genetic fragments. Thirdly, injecting 4 mL of culture solution directly into a small animal's trachea is a way to cause a lung reaction. Given that these little primates weigh around 6 or 7 kgs, it would be the equivalent of injecting, say, 50 mL or almost 2 fluid ounces of culture solution into a human subject. Introducing that amount of material directly into the trachea has the potential to flow into the lungs and cause reactive changes and even potentially a pneumonitis. On this note, it is also unclear what conclusions you can draw from injecting viral cultures directly into an animal's upper respiratory system and then a few days later finding it in the lower respiratory system. Forgive me for being a stickler for the rules, but overall this monkey business has not helped confirm Koch's postulates as they claimed. But do we need Koch's postulates in the 21st century? Some people like to cite the proposed modified criteria by Fredericks and Rellman from their 1996 paper. They suggest that this could be used to prove that SARS-CoV was a single agent causing SARS. But let's take a look at the first 2 of their proposed criteria and how they relate to SARS. Number 1, a nucleic acid sequence belonging to a putative pathogen should be present in most cases of an infectious disease. For example, a PCR test would be positive in a diseased individual. Firstly, it is a shame that they say most cases of disease rather than all, as that widens the possible interpretation. But anyway, as per our investigations and requests to the RKI, where was the evidence that the COVID-1 virus was ever purified? We are yet to see the proof that the RNA belongs specifically to the proposed pathogen. Number 2, fewer or no copy numbers of pathogenic associated nucleic acid sequences should occur in hosts or tissues without disease. For example, PCR tests should not be positive in individuals that are well. Unfortunately, there was no testing of monkeys without disease, but perhaps for the best illustration, we can fast forward to the present COVID-19 SARS-2 situation. It seems in the real world, huge numbers of people can test PCR positive while being asymptomatic, i.e. they are without disease. So either there's a problem with the application of the PCR tests or criteria 2 fails.
That's not going to be good for business. That's not going to be good for anybody.
You get the picture, and there's no point going into more criteria. At least Fredericks and Rellman concede, with only amplified sequence available, the biological role or even existence of these inferred microorganisms remains unclear, and the absence of purified intact microorganisms prevents experimental reproduction of disease, Koch's third postulate. But I'm not quite finished with the monkey study because there was a fatal flaw with regards to the study design. There was no control group. Stressful physical containment and the procedures themselves, like being anaesthetized with ketamine multiple times, have definite effects on animals, including potential histological changes in their tissues. I can't put it any more clearly than this, but no control equals not scientific. A control is necessary to exclude the possibility that experimental findings may arise because of suspected or unsuspected factors unrelated to one's hypothesis. Well, so how should it have been done? Well, test and control monkeys should have been matched in every way. This includes sharing similar demographics, cages, food handling, care, medical history, clinical, laboratory and radiological findings. The only difference being that material administered to the control group would be minus the SARS-CoV isolate obtained from patient 5688 who died of SARS. The control and test subject experiments must run in parallel using exactly the same methods, and to minimise bias, the experimenter must be blind to the identity of both groups. Since there was no proof that the material given to the 4 monkeys was purified CoV-1, it is simply impossible to conclude that the effects observed in the 4 monkeys were specifically due to CoV-1 alone. It is possible that the control monkeys given the same material devoid of CoV-1 may have suffered the same effects. Additionally, these SARS-1 animal studies do not reproduce either aerosol or real-world host-to-host transmission of the alleged pathogen. If we are dealing with such a highly infectious agent, shouldn't we just introduce one infected animal into a contained space and then the others will soon become infected too? Don't forget that the New York Times claimed that SARS can be so explosive that scores of family members and health workers can be infected from a cough from one patient. Shouldn't recreating these terribly infectious so-called super spreaders be a slam dunk? One pattern you may notice is that when direct proof in clinical studies are lacking, researchers start to turn to indirect methods such as molecular detection tests. The media can then present these so-called smoking guns to the public as dramatic stories of how viruses are now brewing up and getting ready to rampage at any moment. Now, this aspect of viral theory is a whole discussion in itself, and I could perhaps devote a video to it in the future. In any case, an example was seen in 2017 when Chinese scientists claimed that a piece of the SARS-1 puzzle was solved. The Nature article stated, "In a remote cave in Yunnan province, virologists have identified a single population of horseshoe bats that harbours virus strains with all the genetic building blocks of the one that jumped to humans in 2002, killing almost 800 people around the world." Okay, but what did they actually do in this remote bat cave?
To the bat balls.
Did they find some contagious bats that could be flying into unsuspecting humans? Not quite. Their methodology involved collecting anal swabs and bat poo over a period of 5 years. Then from all this, well, crap, I guess some might say, a total of 15 coronavirus genomic sequences were constructed, and while none of them actually matched the SARS-CoV-1 on record, when taken all together and with a little bit of imagination, the Nature article states, the human strain could have emerged from such mixing. Although this is a possibility, at the end of the day it is simply speculation. A fully characterized virus that can jump from bats to humans and cause illness in humans was definitely not found in the bat cave. At least the Nature article states that virologist Chang Chun-Tu said he would like to see scientists demonstrate in the lab that the human SARS strain can jump from bats to another animal, such as a civet. In fact, it would have been good to see a clinical study confirming how it spreads in humans too. Yes, there was an official WHO publication on SARS-1, but as it states, it is only a consensus document, and with regards to actual transmission, there are no clinical studies referenced. Oh, and before I forget, as a final point of interest, who acted as editor for the bat poo paper? Now, where have we seen this name before? I cannot emphasize enough that I'm not saying that there are not large numbers of people getting sick and often dying from respiratory illnesses. That has been going on for millennia, and unfortunately for us is the nature of the human condition. What I am saying is that we need to carefully consider how we interpret indirect tests and poorly designed studies to avoid jumping to conclusions. If we cut corners, we risk focusing on the wrong things and missing out on the very ways to treat disease and improve health. With regards to disease, we need to take into account all of the aspects about the person in front of us, not just a test result. Perhaps on that note, it is fitting to end with a quote from Pasteur near the end of his life. "The microbe is nothing, the terrain is everything." To help sustain my channel in this time of censorship, Please support my work on Subscribestar. Link is in the description.